some tasteful Christmas music, so something we'll all enjoy at Christmas. Yeah, I don't quite know why we had to share that. Hi, hello. So welcome to everyone who's joined us and everyone who's come back. Slightly disappointed not to see more of you joining in with the yoga, but there we go. So much for online participation that we were all celebrating. But when push comes to shove, it was just me and John Badil on our own. So welcome to this marathon day on Zoom. This is the second part. We've this strange and difficult year. We've talked very much about how we've gone much more local. Hyper-local was the phrase we used. We talked a lot about community, about engaging, working with festivals to take their work to local communities. Really, really important theme there, and absolutely fantastic to have such a open conversation, people really candid about how they've been working with local authorities, business improvement districts in the UK to make this happen. So the next part, just for those of you here, we're on Zoom. Keep yourself on mute if you would, so we don't get any background noise. I was earlier favouring the speaker view. I now definitely favour the gallery view because it's much more fun looking at people and what they're up to. If you keep your video on, you'll be entertaining me if no one else. Obviously keep the chat going. Drop links in there, say hello in there. It'd be lovely to know who's in the room. We'll keep all of that and we'll turn this into something of a resource at some point in the not too distant future, i.e. next year. Right, part two, international. I gave it some really poncy title. I called it Reconnecting Global Perspectives. It's just like random words I pulled out of a hat there, I think. Because let's just have it. Actually, no, you know what this is? This, to my dear friends internationally, to Jens and Julia and Lucy and Mike and Monique, this is just us standing outside the bar in Târrega at 2 in the morning going, oh my God, what are we going to do next? That's all this is. It's as simple as that. I've missed that so much. And I know we have all missed our international connections and our local ones as well. So, but what I really wanted to do here was, especially as I just had a little news flash on my watch telling me Boris Johnson saying it's unlikely that we will reach some kind of deal. Firstly, I apologize to the world for the state of play in our country at the moment. Please don't stop loving us, and we'll get through this somehow. But I really wanted to look out beyond the borders of this little island and just find out how things have been overseas. And it'd be really interesting to hear how you've coped in the outdoor context, but also let's just talk a little bit more broadly about that. You know, we all have personal stories that feed into our lives. If you want to share a bit of that as well, that would be great. And then at the end, we'll take a little bit about what we've learned. And it would be really interesting to see what some of our international colleagues and friends have learned that is similar or different to what we've got over here in the UK. And then we'll hopefully we'll look ahead. We'll look ahead to being, Mike, you can confirm this, I hope, to being outside that bar in Târrega at some point this year. By the way, sorry, just one little point of order. The postman came. Hey, Urban Canvas, thank you very much for my copy of Lady Screever. That's great. That's you being members in the future. Lovely. So this is Philip Battle's book about Alice Coleman, who was the first female pavement artist and a very interesting figure. And we were talking about this in a one-to-one, and he promised to send me the book, and he did, and I think he signed it. Thank you very much. There's your plug. Right. Hello, hello, Jens and Julia. Hello to Lucy and to Mike and to Monique. In that order, I'd love you to say hello to our colleagues in the room and just tell us a little bit of where you're from and what you do kind of under normal circumstances. So Jens, may you unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm really glad to be here. My name is Jens, and I am the artistic director of Passage Festival taking place in Helsingør in Denmark. I'm also the artistic director of So Festival in England, in the UK. Passage Festival actually happened this year, although it was difficult circumstances, as everyone know. But we kind of insisted of doing a festival on whatever the conditions were. And in principle, I think this is how we should work as festivals, that the public space is changing all the time. So there's a side to it where we kind of have to adapt to the public space as it is. That being said, we were very lucky with our timing of the festival this year, because it was actually possible. I know a lot of you, it wasn't possible to do your festivals. But for us, it was a very interesting experience, and we actually made a very different festival, but also a very good festival, we think. There's a lot that we have done this year that we want to take with us in the future also. We made a lot of performances in nature, in other kind of spaces and where we are normally working, on the beach, and really where people were able to keep a distance. And then we also challenged some artists, where we had Les Golus from France, and they are working very close to people with some of their performers normally, and we asked them to do these performances under the new conditions. And it was also a very interesting experiment that completely failed, because they really had to grab on people and do all kind of stuff anyway. But we think it was a good festival, and we were very lucky that it was possible.
Brilliant. We'll hear a bit more about that. We love celebrating failure as well. Thank you for bringing that in. That's fantastic. Nice to see you. We'll talk some more. Julia, hello from Germany.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hope you're all fine. I'm happy to be here. And I'm the co-artistic director of the Tête-à-Tête festival in Rastatt, and also Park Perplex in Norderstedt. And we had to cancel both festivals very early in March, which was, I don't know. We were about releasing the program and everything, and so we got like from 100 to 0. Then we were grieving about like 3 months or something, very unhappy, focusing on gardening, whatever, and now try to restart the festival life, and managed to get some fundings for the Tête-à-Tête festival for next year, because it's a biannual festival, so it would have been a break of 4 years. And we worked very hard to have a smaller edition next year to do at least something. When we got the money in the summer, we were thinking, okay, we can have a normal festival next year. This won't be it. We are working on a special edition, which will be small and whatever. And it's interesting to see what's going on, but it's far away from what we love and used to. So yeah.
Amazing. And we should say we were going to have a lovely exchange this year,
yes.
weren't we?
Finally, Angus, your first time.
Who's never been to a German festival. But we were going to do an exchange, and I was going to bring some members of OARUK over to you, and we were going to do a bit of mentoring.
Maybe you could be our main act on the festival. It's your first time on a German festival.
I think it's good. I think yoga for the masses is probably the way ahead for me, which is great. Well, I hope we can work on that. I'm just saying publicly.
Yeah.
I hope we can work on that again.
We too.
It would be a great, just great to have something like that to look forward to. Thank you, Julia. We'll talk some more. Yeah. Brilliant. Right, Lucy. Hello. How's Ireland?
Hello. I'm looking at Patricia, but anyway, thank you so much for having me, Angus. As always, it's a joy to be in your company and in your shadow and following you wherever you go. So
You're not in my shadow. We share. We are brother and sister organisations. No patriarchy here.
I greatly benefit from all that Angus does, is all I have to say on that. So I've missed, exactly as Angus has said, I've missed hugely having our chats and our conversations on the road and moving about and stuff. But in a funny way, I have to tell you who I am first, don't I? I'm Lucy, and I work with the Irish Street Arts Circus and Spectacle Network, which is, as Angus says, his little sister. His little sister in Ireland.
Whatevs.
And we do our bit to try to support, develop, encourage, empower, nourish, and hold our lovely Irish street and circus artists here. And in a funny way, this COVID thing, while of course it's been horrible, and of course we've missed all the traveling, and of course we've missed so many performances and shows and everything, but in a funny way, it's kind of been a weird leveler, if that's acceptable to say, because I find myself now in all sorts of Zoom rooms having conversations with all sorts of people that normally, you know, would rush past you and nearly knock you over at the coffee station or, you know, whatever like that. So I do find myself, in a weird way, people have to listen to you on Zoom because you have to be quiet when someone is speaking. So I've had a lot more chance to articulate the voice of circus and street arts through Zoom, which is awful because I hate Zoom, but it's also great because it means we kind of now exist. And the whole thing about where you perform has been like radically shifted, you know, and people who would normally turn their nose down on anyone doing anything outside a traditional arts institution has been like ringing me up going, but how do you do it? And what do you do? And what could you come and speak at our thing? And, you know, well, what if it rains? And, you know, all those usual stupid questions. You get to actually kind of go, lads, don't be worrying about the rain. Like, you can't think like that. You'll never get anywhere if you're worrying about that. So that's been an eye-opener. And I think there's a massive opportunity for street arts, particularly now, to radically change the hierarchy of arts. There you go. That's my piece.
There we go. Another manifesto in part 2. That's great. And very true. Yeah, hey, I've had some crazy calls from theatres and indoor venues. And, you know, one of the reasons I put the picture of the National Theatre, which if many of you may know, I used to program the outdoor festival there, up there, was to kind of go, actually, it's not that new. They have been doing it and we can help you. It's been, you know, yes, a little bit more democracy and culture. Anyway, I'm off on a bandwagon. Thank you from Ireland. Also, I should just say that Lucy, I was at the when COVID first sort of became an issue, a lot of us were at the Walk the Plank in Cobden Works in Manchester. And it was Lucy who got on Zoom. I think the first time I'd seen a Zoom. And you said, what the hell are you all doing in a room like that? You were brilliant. It was, oh, you were right. There were dance classes. It was horrific. But nobody caught it at that point. But yeah, it was amazing. You were my first voice of reason. So thank you for that very much indeed. We'll come back. We'd like to know a little bit more about how Ireland's coped, and what it's looking like in the future. Mr. Ribalta from FiraTàrrega in Spain. Hello, nice to see you. Now, you moved yourself online professionally, didn't you?
Yeah, we have to move. We had to move online because we are a performing arts market. We are a meeting point. So for meeting points, I think digital is not going to be so bad. We have to learn to use it, and the borders are going to go down. And so we'll be able, as we have already done, you know, we can have Monique here, you know, from all the way from Harlem, which is fantastic. And this is thanks to this non-border in media. But we really do want to meet. And the idea is to go hybrid, a little bit of online to keep us looking and finding new people. And also involve other young people, other cultural managers, that are not the usual suspects we find. So these new people, these young people that are very fond and they're very they manage the digital very easily. They have to join us as well, and they have to give us new ideas. So we have to welcome the new generations of cultural managers as well during this time. But then we have to meet. And the idea, I can tell you now, I have Anna Gilibet, the artistic director, working hard for the next edition of FiraTàrrega, 9th, 12th September 2021. So the idea is to make it. The idea is we're going to have a selection of shows. We're going to work with the support for creation. We still don't know how. We had the first meeting, and it was quite funny because everything was, well, option A, option B, option C. And we're going to do that, and we're going to, and the idea is to build small cities within the city, so that we can move from one place to another, be safe, and see things. So it's not only one, but we're going to have many bars in Tàrrega if we manage to. And as we could not make FiraTàrrega 2020, which was from the 9th to the 12th of September, the ones that you have been there, you know, it's 4 days of an intense activity. We have created what we call a nomadic circus. This is going to happen around Catalonia and Spain, but we're going to do some pop-ups in some places with 3 or 4 performances, and we will invite you all to come, and it's going to be a very small. It's very difficult for you to come, we understand, but as we don't want to close doors, we don't want to close windows, we're going to keep, you know, our contact with all our international promoters and all our international friends to invite them, because in Catalonia we have very, very clear the message. We're going to work locally, we're going to go to work globally. We have to combine both things. Work within our borders or trans border, and work as well with all the communities. So we love you, we will still love you. We might not love Boris Johnson, but we love the arts, and Brexit is not going to take away all the British acts from international, at least from Tàrrega. They're not going to go away. So keep coming to us and keep joining. The arts will make the journey.
That was nice to hear. Thank you very much, Mike. We'll talk a little bit more practically. I'd also like to know a little bit about how people did interact online, and I'm really interested that you found perhaps new young people, because that's always the holy grail for so many of us. That's fantastic to hear, Mike. Thank you very much. And finally, from our international group, Monique from Harlem. Now, Monique, you won't mind if I say that Monique took me, she drove me around Central Park, where she had a permit to drive on roads that nobody else was allowed to drive on in Central Park. And I felt like I was king of New York, which is fantastic. God, that sounds like Trump. And then she took me to eat falafel in Harlem, and I felt like the coolest person ever in the world. So Monique, thank you for that. How's things been? Hey, one glimmer of hope came out of your country when you, thank God, voted that man out. But also, my God, you're in COVID Central. You're a black woman living in Harlem. Jesus, you're kind of the year in microcosm, aren't you?
Well, thank you, Angus, for inviting me.
Lovely to see you.
It is an honor to see you all. And September, what would September be without Tàrrega? So it's lovely to reconnect and see you all. You know, we've been going through a lot in this country since March. And I had the wonderful opportunity to travel to Abidjan in March for the second edition of a circus festival. So there were folks there from Circus Strada and other colleagues from all over. And when I returned to New York on March 16th, so to the lockdown. And that's been what I've been dealing with. I'm the director of programming for Harlem Stage, and it is a small, beautiful, repurposed, I guess I could use that word, venue that was a water pumping station built in the 1800s. It is now a performing arts center, and I left Summer Stage after 10 years, which is a large festival here in New York City. It takes place in Central Park, which is why I had the wonderful privilege of driving people around in my official parks car in places that regular citizens could not. It was one of my ultimate pleasures to do that. I am now working and living in the same community for the first time. I've been in New York for 25-ish years, and this is the first time I'm actually able to really see my community through different eyes. And even if you live in a community, if you're not creating art in that community, there's a little bit of a disconnect. And so now that I'm actually creating for the community that I live in, I see it very differently. So all the conversations around hyperlocal apply to what we're doing and what we're facing here in this country and in New York City specifically. And what I did for Summer Stage was present multidisciplinary art, music, dance, theater, and circus. So I introduced contemporary circus to Summer Stage, and that's how I know many of the people here. How have we been doing? you know, this is an election year. This was an election year, and the occupant of the White House is still there. Might have to smoke bomb or drag, who knows. Then there was the brutal murder of George Floyd on May 25th. Racial reckoning, protests that ignited across the globe, not just in Minneapolis, but across the country and across the globe. That's pandemic number 2. Pandemic number 3 is the economic crisis, you know, based on the fallout of having everything shut down. We don't have the same financial structure in this country as many of you do. So money for art is an entrepreneurial mission. It's prospecting. And we managed to do it, right? So the funds that we were receiving, funders were saying, do what you wish. You can now use that money for general operating. You can use it for anything. So that's great, because we then had resources to not have to let go of our small staff, but resources for programming went in that direction. So what we've been doing basically is archival programming. And one wonderful thing about Harlem Stage is they've documented very well. And of course, we've moved to online and digital, and we are trying to navigate that. The success has been dance in public spaces. That really has been what has kept folks engaged with the arts, and dance is flexible. You can, you know, put a dancer in Times Square, which one of my colleagues did from Summer Stage, at 6 a.m. doing a flamenco number in Times Square, which is always packed with all of y'all, all of the international people and people that come from all over the world and all over the country. You know, they descend on Times Square. So those of us who live here try not to go through Times Square. So I will say that it's encouraging to be with outdoor people who understand that. And that's what I'm bringing to Harlem Stage, is how can we animate and activate the spaces around our building. The permits were not allowed, so there was very little. You could do programming with no amplification. So we're hopeful, but there's a lot of challenges ahead.
Amazing. It's so wonderful to hear so much from you there. And I like looking back on when we did, when I came to New York, and I never got to return the favor because I was at the National looking at community. You were in Central Park looking at community. We were both at a similar point in our journeys, and we never kind of got to finish that off and collaborate as we hoped. But it's lovely to see you. Thank you so much. We'll talk a little bit more.
And I will say lastly that
yes,
the festival took place in Central Park, but really the mission of the organization was a program, and it did and still does in all 5 boroughs.
Brilliant. So to our new guests here, I am, for once, I'm delighted to say I have a co-host with me today, who is Lorna Reese, who is an artist from a company called Gobbledygook, who, if you haven't worked with her, you should be, who's also been a bit of a model of transferring her work online in these crazy times and also still doing it live. Lorna, would you like to take the floor, please?
I would, and it's so lovely to hear all of you speaking today. Thank you so much for joining us. In this part of the session, we'd love to hear about your learning. But I'm also very aware that you're all festival programmers and directors, and you work with artists all the time. So I'd also love to hear not just your learning, but also about that relationship with artists. And Lucy in particular, you said something amazing about that hierarchy. That's something I feel as an artist has changed in a really, really positive way. So I'd love to hear about your artists, but maybe if we just do the same order again. So Jens, where are you, Jens? Could you tell us about your learning from this year? What would you take forward?
Yes, since we did a festival, basically the conventional or the way that we usually program our festival, we had to break down and basically start all over again. And I would say that we have never had so much contact with the artist in order to kind of adapt to the new situation. But it's also been quite difficult because the time was so short. So I would say, since we did the festival, we worked a lot with confidence in the artists, that it was very much a conservative festival in the sense that we had to book artists that we knew in advance, and where we were very confident about what they were doing, and they knew the festival and all that, because we didn't have the time to really get into many details about what was going on. Another thing is that we basically we did have contracts with the artists involved, but basically we didn't know what to write in these contracts. So also on that level, it was about confidence, that we said that when you are on the plane, it's our responsibility, and we will take care of you and make sure that you get all your cost covers. But if something happens before you get on the plane, it's kind of your own responsibility. And it was really very, I would say, not chaotic, but a very trustful and very nice way of working. But also somehow it turned into be a little bit conservative, in the sense that it was very much people that we knew, because we had to do it that way. That being said, also we've been in the last years, we've also been trying to involve more classical artists, not just outdoor artists, but more classical artists, institutional artists, working in different circumstances. And there we had a very good cooperation with institutions in Denmark who helped us get some artists. We had a Norwegian artist, Ingrid Fiksdal, a dance piece that took place on the beach, which was really, it's been a very successful piece around the world, and we were really happy to be able to doing that. But we couldn't have done it under normal circumstances, because everything was in the very last minute, and it was on trust with all the people and institutions involved in the festival. So you can say that I think that was the price that we had to pay in order to do the festival, actually, that we couldn't really renew ourselves, you can say. On the other hand, it turned out to be a festival where the artists that we knew were working under completely different circumstances, meaning that it actually became a very different festival. So it was a great experience for everyone, but it was also a little bit strange, I must say.
And will you continue with that practice in the future, or an amended practice, or do you just want to go back to reset normal?
No, we will absolutely want to continue working in this direction. And there's also we've been very, very reluctant in involving digital stuff in the festivals. We've been much more curious on doing that from now on, because there was actually some very interesting projects around the digital stuff. But basically, it is our approach to doing a festival. Our festival is not so institutionalized, meaning that we basically try to define it anew every year, and involving not only street artists but also other types of artists. And this means that it was not that unusual for us working on this. The only thing was that the time frame was very, very tight.
That's brilliant, and I love that you placed all that trust in artists. For me, that's a really and they placed a lot of trust in us.
Yeah. On the boat, but it's basically it's a little bit always like that, but it just there's a lot of bureaucracy around that. You have to write everything down, but actually we have never been in a situation where we had to read the contract very detailed in order to settle a situation. Basically, it's nothing new. It's always like that, but everybody kind of needs to get it written down in order to be absolutely sure. This certainty we couldn't get at this festival, but it's not that different. Trust is very much involved, I think, in every festival all the time.
I think these things have also, everything that people have discussed here already, it feels like it's played out across the UK as well. So we're not so different in terms of our practice and what's happened and our experience of that. Julia, I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about your learning from what you did this year, and what went right and what went wrong.
So it went wrong because it got all cancelled. But as we are working on the festival next year, I can totally agree with Jens about the trust and artists, and because we need to develop new ways of working together to realize something under these circumstances. So it's not only seeing a great show and booking it and bringing it to Germany, because we have to work on other ways to make it really happen. And it's interesting because there are some who have different perspectives of this. Some artist groups, and some we know really good. It's really nice to work on, and some actually are calling and telling, okay, I've got a risk assessment, COVID proof, everything. I've everything in order. Can we work something out? So this is really interesting because it's starting a step beyond to plan the show, how it works, and we start to plan together with the artists and not on our own how we can present some work. So this is very different and very interesting, and somehow I like the way to think differently and not only just book shows and present them.
So does that mean you're making lots of new commissions, or you're reworking existing work completely for COVID?
It's a bit like reworking. So if there are some shows with a lot of participation or something, or moving and whatever, so we are working on how we can make it happen under these circumstances, to have it COVID proof, whatever, because our festival will be in June and we have to fix everything end of March, if it will take place and in which way. And I think end of March, we can't say that it's going to be very easier. So we're planning very, very small, very easy and very safe. And if we can change something in May to grow bigger, we will do this. But for the first time we have to, or for in the moment, we have to make it very proof and very safe. So it's a completely different way of working.
And I don't want to dwell on the negative aspects of things, but obviously you had it was pretty cataclysmic to, stop an entire festival and to cancel that. And you mentioned the word grief. And I think lots of us have also been through, I mean, maybe personal grief because of stuff happening and losing people, but also that. And I just wondered if you could, has that impacted your process in any way, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a bit the perspective you have if you run a festival and you focus completely on public events, festivals, arts and culture and everything. And this is from one day to another, it's all like forbidden. So we were really working on that point and what we could do instead, or how to work with artists instead during the year, or what we can develop on another point of not only just for the festival, for these 5 days of Big Bang, because this is not going to happen. So this was very interesting, and we tried to keep the contact with all the artists because we had a lot of premieres scheduled for the last festival. So, and this is really a pity because they were quite young artists, really trying to get their things started, and where to cancel all this. So this is really interesting to go on how they managed the year without anything. So yeah, so this is how we try to change a bit our style of work, maybe.
Thank you so much. That's so interesting. Lucy.
Yes.
What have you learned? How have you changed? I loved your manifesto, essentially. Let's change the hierarchy. But what else have you learned around that? It would be great to know.
Yeah. Well, I do think this is our time. And I am curious how you all feel about it. And I think we must sort of not style ourselves, but we must articulate ourselves or present ourselves as experts. And I really think it's important that we take this opportunity now and, and really talk about street arts and how it is so vital. I found myself yesterday in a Zoom room with a bunch of theatre practitioners, and they were slagging off street arts. And I don't know why I was there, but it was like, oh, I have still got a lot of work to do, So that's interesting. But anyway, I think something that I've learned, Lorna, is that sometimes pressing the pause button is no bad thing. And I'm looking forward to Christmas and pressing the bloody old pause button. And because this has been a roller coaster of a year. And the COVID thing definitely pressed the pause button with a massive whack. But for many of our artists, that opportunity to stop and breathe and think and reflect has never been possible, because we're all so busy, being busy, trying to make ends meet. and surviving from gig to gig, and what's next, and where am I going next, and how am I going to get there, and Jesus, does anybody know what the name of the person we're supposed to meet is, and all of that stuff. And it just means that you're in a cycle of being busy, and you're not actually ever thinking about what you're doing or why you're doing it or how you're going to get there. You're just trying to get there. And for our members, this gave me an opportunity to really connect with our artists and our members of the Isaacs Network, to help them, for many of them, the first time ever, to write grant applications, because they had to, they needed to, they realized that they could, and they probably should, and they did. And we had a lot of successful applications this year of first-time applicants who never would have thought of approaching the Arts Council because they're too busy doing gigs. So that was good. It gave them a lot of time to really read, to engage in research, to read books, watch films, talk to each other. It gave them a lot of time to engage in many of the Isaacs events. We did lots of different trainings and talks and presentations, and loads more people came than would ever have come in a physical capacity. Like, hello, guys, I've been putting these things on for a while, and like, we've got a thing here now with 80 of you on it. You'd have never frickin' come if it wasn't in your front frickin' room. You feckers, excuse me, that's a good word in Ireland. You know, so that was good, because then we were able to start having conversations with them about, you know, how, what's his name? Alistair O'Loughlin from the Urban Playgrounds, one of your boys, did a fab talk with us last week. Oh my God, like, he set the room on fire, and the people at it would never have considered going to a talk with Alistair O'Loughlin if it wasn't on their kitchen table. You know, so that was pretty good. So that's a learning, Lorna. And I'm trying to tell you what other learnings. I have one more learning, Lorna. My relationship with the Arts Council has changed. That's good, because it was pretty shitty before. And my relationship with Dance Ireland has changed. And there's a lot of conversation in the talk there about dance. And I think dance are starting to realise that circus is the future, and circus are starting to realize that they need to do a bit of what they call dramaturgy, if that's even the word, and maybe a bit of choreography sometimes could be good with circus. So these are all learnings. Okay, that's enough.
Oh, there's so many brilliant things in that, and I think there's also loads of stuff that I feel like as an outdoor arts community we are closer than we've ever been, or certainly I feel that, and that's a wonderful thing. Because of time, I'm going to move straight on to Mike.
Yes, no, following a little bit, you know, the whole story, and following ideas that Jen, Julia, and Lucy already put. On our side, the best thing that happened here in Spain is that, regarding the artist, is that everybody joined forces for the artist, and it's true, and it started with institutions. I have to say, FiraTàrrega is a performing arts artist that is funded by the government of Catalonia, and it has funding from the government of Spain. With this situation, you know, we had a meeting with them, and some of the budgets had to be cut, but the concept from the government of Catalonia and from the rest of the governments was, right, so the money we're giving you is money that has to impact the artist. And that was a message that was very clear for us. So we're going to give you money, and this money has to go for a structure, does not have to go for any other expenses that creation and creators. And that was the institutional message, which was good, but it joins the message that already everybody had in mind. A good thing that is the real collaboration started. We always fill up, you know, the story and the narrative about cooperation and collaboration, but I think we actually, you know, we do it in a way, but well, you know, we want a win-win, but I want my win to be more than your win. You know, it always happens that in this case, we always had in mind that it had to be real collaboration. We're doing this nomadic circuit thanks to the accomplishment of 50 institutions or 50 other people that are joining forces with FiraTàrrega, and we're all joining forces to create. This is one thing. I like what Jen said about keep the changings that we created. I think that we don't have to see the year 2020 as a year in between, you know, the past and the future that's going to be the past, because the past is past. Things will change forever. And I think we have to embrace this change, and we have to see the new things that we can do and not go back. I don't think we can go back. And even the artists have to think about how to go back to the public realm. When are we going to be able to use the public space as we were using it? And if the audiences will be there, one day we have to ask the audiences, what is their experience now? What are they looking for? Maybe we can't offer them anymore what we were offering. So we have all to think together. The idea of work differently and not only presenting shows that Julia was saying is absolutely true. We have to, I think now it's the time to reshape on how we produce, and we have to go to other methods. And here I join Lucy's idea of slowness, you know, to think more, to create differently, and even not to create and then, because we're going to create a lot, but where is the market? I imagine that all the festivals in 2021 will have to program the companies from 2020, and then you'll have the shows from 2021. And if we are creating those shows for 2022, what will happen in 2022? We have more shows that actually events that will be able to present these shows. So people is going to get frustrated. Let's change the way we work and let's do it together. I think the collaboration now has really started. And I invite you all, you know, to keep on this way, you know, the presenters, the festivals, and not only locally, but globally. We can work digitally to create as well, you know, be open to that.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And I will never go back in my practice. And I think there's a lot of people who this year, it's taken them a year to embrace it, but it is exciting. And I think you're right, things will change forever, but that's very hopeful, as well as being, maybe we've had the grief, we've got through the grief and we're now in the positive. Monique, I wondered if you could tell us about the artists you've worked with and your learning for this year.
One of the big learnings is not all artists have the capacity to do a home concert or theater production without support. And we are asking a lot of our artists to give us a digital concert for less money, one, because we all are struggling financially, and, you know, make it look fabulous. So there's some of my colleagues that are sending equipment, technical equipment, whether that's a mic or an amp or whatever, a package to artists to support them. We don't have the capacity to do that. We were able to acquire 3 cameras through a grant to help support our digital offerings. And so we got super excited. And that's one thing, when I started at Harlem Stage 3 years ago, it's such a beautiful venue. I said, this is going to be live from Harlem Stage. I want to create a program that's live from Harlem Stage. It lends itself to digital programming. And so now we have these cameras. We're super excited, but that increases the budget, because now you need 3 more people to run the cameras. You need a mixer, you need an editor, and you need the crew in the back that you already have. So, and we have less money. So we really needed to take a pause, and that's what we're going to do at the top of the year. So that's one learning. How can we support artists in a way that responds to the time that we're in now? And the other learning that I wanted to share, so when you think about cinematic, people are exhausted. I'm exhausted. Lucy talked about it, of Zoom. People are exhausted of looking at these squares. So how can we think about the offerings the programs that we're creating through a cinematic lens? So I'm excited to share that after, you know, with moving through the pandemic and everything, the pandemic is one, but it was massive in New York, as you know. And it's up ticking now. So we're closing the restaurants again. You know, I have friends and family members. So what I do want to share that I'm excited about is riding. I'm now a born again biker. So I've been biking through Harlem through the pandemic to really just get my mind right and get, you know. And so again, living in Harlem, working in Harlem for the first time, and then biking through Harlem, seeing it through a different lens. When the statue of Edward Colston was pulled down in Bristol, that was a flashpoint for me. And I was noticing the statues in Harlem. There's 5 monuments in Harlem: Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Duke Ellington. And when that Edward Colston was snatched down and thrown in the river, I was like, well, how do these statues come about? What's the story? How do you get a statue erected? What is the process? And called on a friend of mine who is a architect and a historian of Harlem, and he gives walking tours. So he knew everything. And we've just completed, so it's a 5-part series that we're filming. We just wrapped it on Wednesday. We had to do the second part on Zoom, unfortunately. But I'm really excited about that. And so it lifts up both, what does it mean? What is civic participation? What does it take? Who's involved in creating monuments? Who's selected? There's a new monument in Central Park that celebrates the centennial of the women's suffrage movement. And they left out, well, they have 3 women. So when they showed the design and the project was moving forward, there was a response. Where are the Black women that worked in the suffrage movement, that really were pushed out of the suffrage movement? But that's a whole other conversation. So they redesigned and they added Sojourner Truth. So that also just had me thinking about, how do we engage in public spaces that's beyond a festival, that's beyond some of the work that I've already done, right? So we've created these 5, and I'll put the link in of the first 2. And it looks at, I'll say lastly that one of the subjects is C. Virginia Field. She was a Manhattan Borough president, and she used to give talks in elementary schools, and a young primary student, a boy, asked, why aren't there any women statues in Harlem? And she said, that's a great question. Let me work on it. So it was that little boy, 8 or 9 years old, that advocated through his innocent question of the Harriet Tubman statue being erected, and it's beautiful. So that's what I'm looking at. That's what we're looking at. How can we animate? So I'm now looking at Harlem as the stage versus Harlem stage. And the last thing I'll say is we've been really looking at the difference between diversity and equity. Diversity means you just add more people in the room that might not be in the room. Equity means you give them what they need to actually do the work that they need to do. So we really have been working on equity, and you might have seen that there's a lot of movements with Blacks on Broadway, Blacks in theater, the LGBTQI community. So one of the silver linings, if you could say that, is it has leveled the playing field in many ways, as Lucy has said. And I too have gotten calls from institutions that would never call me at this institution. I have relationships with them, but now they want to collaborate, you know, and that's a wonderful thing. So we hope that they stay true to that. I feel that that is something that everyone wants, a little bit more for everyone, and not so much for a few.
Amazing. You've covered all 5 of you have covered so much. And yeah, my world feels better. Just on the statues, if you want the kind of converse, do look up the Mary Wollstonecraft statue that just got erected. And there's a really brilliant Twitter parody of Mary Wollstonecraft being allowed down from heaven in order to view her statue. I'm just going to say no more, but really interesting. So look, we're writing a manifesto essentially here. I think that's our task of the day, isn't it, Lorna? So I'm just going to ask our 5 guests one last time, what's your one thing you're going to put in our outdoor arts of the future global all-conquering manifesto, what would be that key point that comes out of this? I think I'm going to guess what it might be. Maybe we start with Jens again, please.
Thank you very much. Well, I think for me, it's really the thing that also as working with festivals, that it's that we have to be that is very important that we don't get too conservative and keep on building the festivals that we have always done. I think this we have really learned from this experience, that we have to keep open and we have to keep really new impulses coming in. I'm really glad also hearing all this about young people suddenly coming into the discussion via the digital media and stuff. And I think for me, this is really the most important, that we basically every year try to redefine our festivals. I'm seeing this in the point of view of the festival more as in the point of view of the artist, meaning that we really have to make a big effort in order not to become institutions where we are doing everything in the same way year after year, but are really working hard on reflecting on the work that we have previously done and keep it open for the future. I think for me, that's the most important thing.
That is great. I think that's so key. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, look forward to seeing you in Passage. I will make it there, I promise you. Along with all the rest of us.
It will be a big tour for you next year.
Yeah, oh, it's a big tour. I'm taking I'll take the Zoom room with me. Julia, how about you? What are you going to throw into our Outdoor Arts Manifesto from Germany?
Yeah, as Jens just said, reflection is very good, and keep on developing our festivals and don't be too institutional. It's a main point for me. But it's also this trust and collaboration with all the artists we're working on now, and to think things differently with trust and collaboration. And the big point for us is diversity for the future, because it's we have to work on that.
And again, taking what Monique said there about how we view that was very interesting and useful way to hear it, actually. So I'm very grateful for that. So Lucy Medleycott, sister in Ireland there. It's so interesting to hear you, because you and I are sort of slightly in unique positions in that we do very similar jobs and there aren't too many. So it's been really nice to hear that. I have a lot of parallel experience with you. Yes, the feckers came in the room. Thank God, but it's been brilliant having that room going every week. Yeah. And for me, I mean, I said this earlier, you'll feel the same, Lucy, is that the democracy that I always wanted to bring to the organization has been imposed upon us now at long, in equal measure, which has been great. So that's been incredible, and something that I'm tagging onto the manifesto here, but something that I'm not, in any way going to lose at all there. But it's really nice to hear. So from a personal point of view, thank you for sharing similar experiences. And hasn't it been brilliant watching people apply for money who would never have done it? It's been moving beyond belief. I closed the Zoom room and I shed a tear many a time. Lucy, what are you going to stick in the manifesto for the feckers?
It puffs me up with motherly pride when I see these things happen. But my top tip for your manifesto is we are essential workers, and we must use our voice, and we must write those bloody letters to your politicians and to your heads of institutions and change the bloody world. That's my top tip.
It's so true. I think it was Paul who put art can change the world. Art can heal the world as well, I think was what Bradley said this morning. Hope and healing. Amazing. Thank you, Lucy. We'll take the fuckers with us. Oh, feckers, sorry. Anyway. Oh God, we can't put it on YouTube now. Anyway. Okay, moving on. Let's hear Mr. Ribalta. What are you going to stick in there?
I think we must change things. We must change the way we do things. The same objective, but with new ways to reach it. And we must do it proactively, positively, and we have the capacity, because we are used to reinvent ourselves. Public space is a place for invention. Let's inhabit the space again, but in another way of doing it. And we're able to, we're very capable of.
Public space, so important that we hear that phrase yet again, and that's brilliant. Monique, you sort of changed the world already, but one last thing to add, have you got?
I would say adaptability. Again, I think Mike said that already. You know, for outdoor spaces, as I can say in New York and probably everywhere, we have been forced to be more flexible. So as I mentioned, Times Square, rooftops, gardens, parks, all of this for our other presenting, or at least my colleagues, they're like, wow, dance in Times Square, dance on a rooftop, wow. Y'all, come on, get to the party. So I'm hopeful that the broader presenting community understands the value of public art, public spaces, and not so rigid about what it looks like and if it has, you know, smooth lines or, you know, a smooth presentation. I think here that's what has been worried. And we've been anchored and inspired really by art, from the DJs to the dancers to the spoken word artists. So let's keep going.
Amazing. That's great. And it's true, isn't it? I mean, despite all the financial lunacy that's been going on in terms of supporting culture, you know, and everyone will have different stories in this international group. Actually, everyone's talking about going on Zoom to watch art, is talking about getting, you know, that has been part of the narrative, along with the really important conversations about our healthcare workers and our frontline workers, really, really important, but it has been there. Also, one thing I'm following up from Lucy is it's really interesting, because I've got Arts Council colleagues in here. I found it easier to articulate what we do. People have really understood. And it's awful. There was that moment where the government said, oh, well, outdoor performance can continue. And suddenly everybody started having to look at what it was. And that was the really strange. And also having the chance to say, no, it's not just about opera in stately home gardens. It's about a whole other set of things. It was an opportunity, and I love change. I just kind of want to acknowledge, thank you all so much. I noticed we've got a few other internet. We have Gabrielle in the room. This is just kind of completing my Târrega drinks party, I suppose, in my head. I saw Tanya in there. Who else did I see? I saw a few others from Mar from Catalan Arts. Really nice to see you, and we will continue to change the world one country at a time, despite whatever happens. Lorna, have you got any final thoughts?
Just thank you so much. I feel so hopeful for our earlier session, and this is what I love most. And what really strikes me is just that we have similar lived experience, but the passion you articulate working with artists and then working with you and holding hands together, that's what I feel is the most amazing thing. And that's what makes it successful in making our work. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us today.
Yeah, brilliant. And just lovely to see your faces. I just well up at that anyway. So look, we're going to take another little break. I've got a little bit more exercise to do. And we're going to meet again in an hour, and we're going to talk to some artists about some reflect on how they've been working this year. Some of the changes that they've made, similar structure again. And again, we could have populated that next one several times over from this room quite happily. Yes, I did change suit. I just want to point out I changed glasses as well to match the suit. I just want to add to that, and maybe that little pattern has not changed yet. Lorna?
I think we're going for a costume change, aren't we?
I think we certainly are. Brilliant. Hey, thank you once again to Jens and Julia, and to Lucy, and to Monique, and to Mike for joining us. Really, really lovely to see you. Can't wait to see you in the flesh. Can't wait to make more plans together. And also thank you as a country. Well, we're all struggling with identity in so many different ways, but as a country with a particular international struggle at the moment, it's just lovely to hear you, and thank you for your support and understanding in these difficult times. We'll take a little break, and we'll see you again in an hour, and more good chat. Clearly, good chat is available. Thank you all so much.